Another bill, another question we asked was, is it an effective and efficient way to do it? There are some bills that were brought to the floor too fast, too hastily, a reaction rather than a forethinking about it, and were not well thought out, were not written sufficiently that a person would really know what it said, or something that would result in litigation and lawsuits right away. And that one not often would it apply, but there were times I would cast a vote against that and compare that to, for instance, like the Obamacare bill, as was referred to. That was one Nancy Pelosi, people remember, saying we're going to have to pass it before we find out what's in it.
Yeah.
I would have voted against that one for constitutional reasons, for other reasons, but this one would have picked it up as well because it was not an efficient and effective way to do it. Matter of fact, you didn't even really know what was in that bill, so I would not ever vote for something that was put together in that kind of a fashion. Another question was, should it be done on the state level? If I go to Washington, the question was, should it be done on the federal level? And then generally the constitutional question picks that up, but not always. Then the last question was, do we have the money to pay for it? Because at the end of the day, government has no money that they do not take from the taxpayer. Government has no money on its own. They have only that which the businesses and individuals have produced. It's their property. And so the consideration that I have always had in office is that whereas you may be in office, you may have the power to take somebody's money and to spend it, you don't always have the right to take their property and to spend it. And far too often the problem that we have in Washington right now is we have a debt of $15 trillion, long-term debt of about $100 trillion. The concept of the fact that somebody owes this, and it's the American people, and it's the person at home, it's the retired person in their home who has no income and who are seeing their incomes dribble and go down to zero. And it's those who are trying to keep their families together when they're young that this debt comes in and takes away the value of their dollar, of their income, and the value of their assets. And it's theft on the grand scale. And so I would look at that and say, if we don't have the money right there to pay for it, to take and borrow it, and particularly in Washington, to print the money, is effectively theft. And we cannot go that road. And so those are the questions that I ask. And the point was to guard my vote. And they are principle-based. There were hundreds of hours spent in thinking these things out with several people that involved to think through the process and saying, let's make sure everything is considered so that we don't leave a hole in the consideration process. And the result would be that, you know, if men and women were to cast their votes according to that checklist, which I have promised, I mean, I've done that in the House here, and I will do that in Washington, what it does is it makes me accountable.
Yes.
And it makes anybody else accountable to have to go back and say, all right, why did you do that? And justify how you voted, why. And secondly, it provides freedom for me. I found that when we came up with this checklist, we would give it to our own leaders who would come to us and try to bargain for our votes. We'd say, look, this is how we'll cast our votes. We want you to know ahead of time. This is the criteria. So don't come and ask us to violate our conscience or our principles, because if it violates these things, we're telling you right up front, we're not going to vote for it, and put it together in right fashion. So if that checklist were followed, do you know what would happen? We wonder, how can we get government back in its box and spend less? How can we address our overspending problem? How can we cut back on the over-regulations that are in this country coming out of Washington? How can we make Congress more accountable to the people? If they'd make their votes according to that checklist, you'd get rid of your budget deficit. You'd reduce the over-regulation. You would get the federal government out of state control. You would back off the EPA that's controlling everything, literally in our environment and small businesses. You would have drilling for energy coming. You would fix the economic problems in this country if the votes were made according to that simple checklist. It's that powerful. And so I've been telling people that's what I will do, because if you know that, if somebody knows that, they can hold me accountable. They'll also predict where I'm going to go and how I'll vote. And certainty is what we need. I think the people want. They want predictability and certainty from those who are in office. They want somebody who they can trust.
Yes.
I think that simple thing helps to reassert and reestablish that level of trust.